Hi, and welcome to Night Clerk Radio. This is episode 61, new Officewave, or possibly officesoft. Anyways, it's a genre of music defined by its relation to office and business music. We'll explain that in a little bit. With me, as always, is my co-host, Burke. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Great. I hope you're feeling very productive today.
I am. I know a lot more about office life than the last time we recorded one of these episodes. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I guess not really, though, because I'm remote, but I'll pretend I do.
That's everyone else does.
That's right.
So just a reminder, I am doing a Kickstarter for Ludonarrative Dissidents, a tabletop RPG review podcast. We're doing a Kickstarter to pay for season 2. We've met our main goal, but we're trying to reach some stretch goals so we can do more episodes, review more games, talk about more game mechanics. It's a lot of fun. You get rewards. There'll be a link in the show notes. So, yeah, if you're curious, all season 1's available to listen to, so you can get a sense of what that's like. So if you like tabletop RPGs, if you want to learn more about them, that would be a podcast to check out. Also, we're in issue 7 of Visual Signals, which is available now, both in print and in PDF form. You can read it in your browser. You could order a copy through Amazon and read it in MeatSpace. And I have an article in there.
You do?
Go to Spliff Radio, which is a YouTube channel that does visual mixtapes, visual mixes of Vaporwave. And they're very, very, there's only 3 on the channel, but they're all really good. And use Spliff Radio as sort of like my thoughts on the idea of the Vaporwave visual mixtape in general.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I think you're working on an article for them possibly in the future.
Yeah, I misunderstood some of the due date stuff. So, yes, I wanted to do something on like Vaporwave and cinema and organizing some of those thoughts of like, well, when we say a piece of media is or is not Vaporwave, what do we actually mean? Like we've talked about on the show, it's just a little sloppy sometimes. Like whether or not something's Vaporwave. So do that and then kind of tongue in cheek apply that Vaporwave analysis to early 90s straight to TV movie, The Tower with Paul Reiser.
Yeah.
That's the broad plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Which if you never heard of that movie, not many people have. It's available on YouTube and it's very good and very Vaporwave. So
it is extremely Vaporwave.
It is.
It is actually pretty known in the Vaporwave community. I think I mentioned this in the essay or article that it is actually stills from it are used as covers to some Vaporwave albums because it does have a very like liminal empty office space, which transitions nicely into what we're talking about today because it is corporate Vaporwave.
It's very much a Vaporwave movie too because the hero literally uses music to save the day.
That's true. He does fight the evil computer AI with a MIDI version of Bad Moon Rising.
Yeah.
So
they had the rights for one song and they're gonna
the melody for one song, not even the song. You only hear it in synth form.
It's very good. So yeah, and speaking of MIDIs and corporations, we should talk about the genre we're looking at today, which has been called many names. Officewave or officesoft, kind of like Mallsoft, but for the office. This is a very, very small genre, but there are a couple dozen albums at a minimum on Bandcamp of not just Plunderphonics, but actually original compositions. And it's music to me. When I think of this genre, I think of like it's the music of business, and it's the music that business uses as like it's the music that business chooses to use to present itself to the world. And it's the music that of business presentations, sales pitches, instructional videos. It emphasizes like progress and productivity and efficiency and a positive mindset. So it's the music equivalent of business motivational books and courses, I think, in a lot of ways. It's the same mindset.
Yeah, I had to do a little bit of genre expectation jumping for this episode because the first time we talked about corporate vaporwave, this type of music, was way back episode 16 where we did music core, where we did corporate mixtape, which is a Donovan Hikaru and Cat System Core project. And then we did a Prism Core Virtual Enterprises, which I feel like is related to Vectroid.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And that is more of what I thought we were getting with these, honestly. And it turns out to not be the case because the earlier episode we did, that music is very, we called it the music of boredom. right? It's very meant to like not inspire anything in you in like a good way. And I equated it to being, we always talk about like dualities in Vaporwave. So that was like the mallsoft / corporate. It was like corporate mallsoft. And it's like the production side of music to engage in the consumption side. That was basically the point that we made in that episode.
Yeah.
But this is very different. This is, like you said, this is jingles and branding and like the music of advertisement. It's interesting because it's a lot more interesting than I thought. Like it's music to at least grab you, not to be totally ignored, but not so obtrusive that it distracts you from being advertised to.
Yeah.
And the way that manifests, I think a lot of the stuff actually has like really interesting musical complexity. And I almost equate these types of things to like bored jazz musicians who like have to do this to pay the bills.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a bit of jazz in it. Yeah. Like
there's like interesting chord choices. One of the tracks on your album has some like slight proggy metric modulation stuff, which is like where you imply a time signature or feel or a meter that's kind of different from what you're just playing, but without really changing it, which is what causes some of those shifts in the last track of your album, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
And then, in my album, there's like, my album is even different though, because it doesn't really feel like music of advertising.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between like the music you would hear in an ad meant to be put on TV or meant for major public consumption. And a lot of what I think of business music, which is music made for like more specific things, like a sales pitch to in potential investors or to showing off the quarterly profits to a board of directors, or like just motivating your employees, your manager, and you need to get your employees to sign off on this new plan you have for your division. And it's sort of like more internal focused or a more focused approach than just throwing it out to the public. So I guess the for me, the key phrase would be like a corporate utopia. Like that's the idea. And it's getting into more than just sales. They really believe this stuff. Like this is ideology. Like this is like, they really do think that like increased productivity and efficiency and everything else brings about utopia. Like that's the whole point of everything, is to be more productive. And they really like the people who own corporations and run corporations actually have beliefs and hopes and dreams. And like, this is it. This is what this is how it sounds like. And what's also interesting about this music, if you think about how it's distributed, it's almost never put out to the public. It's actually like sold as stock music or royalty free music. It's done in libraries. Get 10 hours of this music, for $200. And the artists are unknown. Largely, the track names are changed between different offerings, like it's part of that, like in Marxism, it would be like reification, mystification. It's like this stuff just came out of the ether. Don't worry about it. It's just don't worry about how it was produced or who produced it. It's produced. All right. Now focus on the thing we're trying to sell you about how our stocks are going to go up. Our new miracle product. If you just invest in us, it's going to go great. Yeah. So what I really like about it, I don't know, like what did you really like these albums or?
Yes. Yeah. I did. Not all of them, but like I found them very interesting, I guess is what I would say.
I like the idea that both these albums, as far as I can tell, are original compositions. And so you have artists who are working in the vaporwave genres and synthwave who have heard enough of this stuff, because you all hear it, even if you're at a low level, like, employee training videos and watching like people posting sales pitches of the Microsoft Office from like, 1994. And you're like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Yeah. And so now so it's all around us. It's as this ambiguous thing that we can't really place a name to, but now they're like distilling it into original music for albums and kind of like making fun of it, but also like, this is like, we really want to explore it and really put a spotlight on this music that tries very hard not to be spotlighted. Like it is meant to be there, but not.
And especially I think now where you do have access to this old media, because in the 90s when this would have been popularized, I mean, I was I was 10, right? So like,
Yeah.
I wasn't watching corporate videos, but now I can go on YouTube and I can watch like and make fun of. Here's an Excel ad from 1993. You know, the one that was grabbed by the algorithm like a week or two ago of the two guys in the elevator.
Yep. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, we got to make a report for the boss. Don't worry, Excel can add up 5 numbers for you.
Yeah,
stuff like that type of stuff. I can be like re-exposed to all that. Or there's the famous, like the cast of Friends teaches you how to use Windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One, or at least it's like Matt LeBlanc, I think, and Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. Rachel and Chandler, basically. Fucking Bill Gates makes a guest appearance, I think, or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the point is like that being in modern media culture lets you relive all of that. Like it doesn't never really has to go away.
Yeah.
But we don't really have stuff earlier. Like I really don't know, except for like coronet type films that were preserved. I don't really know what it was like too much before that.
Yeah, business, the sound of business in the 60s, 50s through the, like, I mean, you probably, the sound of business music didn't really exist until after World War II, I would guess. And
I have some rough idea of what it's like, of like those little like violin, like playful little violin sweeps as like little Timmy learns to look both ways, that type of stuff.
If you get into the older library music, you know, the Populux, the car of the future from Ford, you know, World's Fair kind of stuff. And but I think once cheap synthesizers came out and got really available to everybody, and session musicians figured out how to use them, and they started cranking out like libraries of music, and business, oh wow, this is cheap. 20 hours of music I can use for all my presentations. I gotta use this. It sounds futuristic and cool and slick. There's always that blend of like ruthless salesmanship, but also naivety about culture, like in this style of product, of cultural product, whatever you want to call it, you know. So yeah, it's really cool to see musicians really meditating on this and like making albums outside of business. It's just like, here's an actual album of this stuff.
Yeah. I really just want to talk about them.
All right.
I think all my remaining points have to do with the music.
Let's dive in. That was a clip of Yes, We're Open, track 1 from Tomorrow's Corporate Culture Today by Branding Solutions Incorporated, which is another alias of Tronic DX7, listed as a professor of meteorology on their Bandcamp page. I just noticed that it's very good. They've had a couple of albums labeled as synthwave and vaporwave. I haven't listened to them, but you know, I noticed this album because of a promotional video Tronic DX7 posted onto the Vaporwave Reddit, which we'll link that video in the show notes, but it's done perfectly as this like, hey, do you need the music of tomorrow now? You know, like it's a 2-minute like late night infomercial about how you need this business music. It's done with like stock footage of meetings and stuff like that. And it's extremely good. And so, yeah, it is. Let's see, listed as smooth jazz, vaporwave, mall soft, retro wave. A lot of tags on it on the Bandcamp page. So I quite like this album. It's only 6 tracks. It's not very long. What do you think, Burke?
I liked it a lot. Right from the beginning, just sort of reviewing what I wrote down. The first track immediately had me thinking about a point from our last episode, which is like musical semiotics, or like what do you associate with certain sounds? Because I actually thought that track, if you gave me no context, so you didn't tell me the artist name, didn't give me a track name, gave me no album cover, whatever, I would actually probably guess that it was like an N64 soundtrack homage.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
Which is of the kind of the same era of mid 90s, which had a fun game in my mind of like, guess that genre.
Yeah. Like the clip I put in, I really like because, you know, the track starts with like this really like hopeful kind of synth piano. But, you know, to me, I was thinking like PBS, like kids show credit sequence, like opening or end credits, very structured. And then like when we get the sample, it just goes in with this fucking organ. And I was like, hell yeah, this is great. Like a synth organ, like playing, just kind of was a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then like track 2 moves into a bit closer to what I was expecting, which is like elevator music-y, like your pretty standard, like gentrified Latin percussion, like a bossa nova, but not quite.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a xylophone or something's coming in like 30 seconds or something.
Yeah.
It's a bit jazzy, but yeah, it's very elevator music.
Yeah, it's very, very 60s, like Latin jazz. Then track 3 is interesting because we always talk about ripping off Vangelis in the context of Blade Runner. But this is ripping off Vangelis in the context of Chariots of Fire.
Oh, yeah. I didn't make that connection. I was just like, ooh, field recordings. We got the seagulls at the beach. Like, yeah. So like this is already how you separate this from like music cores. Like there's like both albums have field recording kind of stuff in it. Like specifically beach because you want that like calmness and everything.
Yeah, exactly. But I just thought that some of the synth lead stuff that comes in like a minute and a half in reminded me of like Chariots of Fire type sound, which I was like, oh, we don't get a lot of that. We always get the Blade Runner CS80 Vangelis. Never the
that's true. That's very true.
Never all the other music he made that's very famous, but no one ever references. But yeah, it's that very triumphant. Like I really want to use your software. It makes me excited to be alive. Type stuff.
Yeah. Now track 4, I really liked. It's called Industrial Chic, but I got like it's got a very MIDI like 80s 90s sound to it, but I really liked like that synth kind of flute coming in there because that's very like we're talking about the environment and the forest in this when you have that flute sound in there. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, that is shots of seagulls free from oil spills. Like that's just what
we're cleaning up. We have to. The world is our duty to protect the world, and that's why we're donating 5% of our profits to clean up seagulls from the beach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the opening of track 4 is real nice. I love the little bit of woodwind and like opening strings and stuff. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Of like this type of music, even when it's not like a ironic album. I don't know how ironic this is. I'm just going to assume it is. Sorry if it's not.
Oh yeah, I mean, from the promo video, I would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There's the promo video you mentioned. Like it is one of those things where it's still interesting, even though it's not meant to be. Like that's a good example of that.
I think though, track 5 is got the greatest title of any song I've seen in a long time. Times New Roman, which is basically the perfect title for an Officesoft song. I can't think of one, but it's very jazzy and kind of like a PBS. Again, like I kept thinking PBS, so I thought like this would be in place in like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, the kids show. But yeah, it a lot of fun.
That's a good pull. Yeah. I was trying to think of where it was because at first I was like, oh, it's like jazz playing at an Applebee's brunch. But that felt mean.
Yeah.
That felt like a little harsh. It is interesting, but it is like that pacified noir.
Dad's a jazz musician, but he doesn't want to freak his kids out with some Miles Davis or anything. And so like, let's just play something that like, you want to get into jazz, right? Yeah. Come on, kids.
There's that, but I do think it's like slightly pseudo dark noir. I think that's actually, which is why Carmen Sandiego is a good pull. It's like, let's go gumshoes. We got to find out where in South America the CIA sent Carmen Sandiego. I don't know.
I really like, though, our second sample is going to be from the last track. I'll have those reports done by Monday, which is also a very good song. So I find that really interesting, and hopefully you can say a little more. But I really like how it's going up and then sliding back down the scales. It sounds like, and I thought it was a very intricately structured song, a little more complex than I would have anticipated from this album.
Yeah, this is the one where I'm probably overanalyzing it because so much of what we listen to does not get analysis. But that sort of what you call interesting slow down and speed up is what I think it's like could be considered metric modulation, which, like I said in the intro, is when you imply a time signature or feel other than what's being played for like a brief period. And I think that's what's happening is I think the metric feel is just changing to something more like quarter note triplets from like eighth notes. So it feels slightly longer.
Okay.
To get through a phrasing. So this is like a trick you hear in a lot of like prog and jazz where they'll play something like 3/4, but then also at times make it sound like 12/8 and stuff. Like you just shift kind of your ride and where your accent beat is for like a measure or two, and it feels different, but you never really left where you were. You just kind of displaced it and shifted it around.
Okay.
So
yeah, no, it's very interesting musically. And it's still in place though with the theme of this album. So I thought that was a really fun way to end the album. And again, this is a short album. Like I kind of want to hear more. I would love to hear like a longer album in this vein, but or from this artist, because I think they're really onto something. But yeah, and this is a brand new album. It came out June 25th, 2022. So I really like that artists are like making this music like right now.
Yeah, both these albums are very recent, which I thought was another interesting coincidence that they kind of both came out at the same time or close enough.
And speaking of our second album.
So that was from the middle of track 4, Edutainment Software, off the album Virtual Dreams by VirtualSoft Home. VirtualSoft Home itself being a collaboration between Corporate Realities, aka Chiba City Blues. So we're deep into the Vaporwave aliases here. And Polyglot, who worked together to create this sort of 7-track album. There's a handful of collaborations. I think they each contributed a few tracks and then a few joint tracks based on the credits in the title. So, for example, track 4 was a collaboration between the two of them. And I picked this one as kind of the transition track because I think of all the tracks on this album, it's kind of the most like sterile corporate feeling-y of them, which is like very mellow synth, but like kind of still an interesting bass line as like your glue to kind of keep you going through all the rest of it. And then it's kind of not generic, but very corporate, like these big synth piano, like exciting pieces, but still has some noticeable complexity.
Yeah. No,
like towards the end, there's a key change and like some harsher synths come in. But overall, this album, to talk about broadly, is advertised as I don't want concept albums to be a strong word, but yeah, it's like moving through a virtual world where only your imagination is the limit, to read the liner notes.
The cover art is very good. Yeah. So
that's what I was about to talk about.
Okay,
so
sorry.
No, don't be. Yeah. So it's heavily inspired by mid-90s Microsoft aesthetic, very Windows 3.1. So the cover art, Encarta is exactly what I was going to say. I think I wrote in my notes, Encarta looking ass cover, I think is my technical analysis. It's credited as Mysterian Flow by splitsaber.exe. But yeah, it's like stairs and a wavy piano and an hourglass and a globe. A little Microsoft logo. Windows 95 and Windows 3.1 branding and stuff on it. It very much looks like something in middle school that I would have fired up. And that's the whole album. I feel like it is overall less ad focused. I mentioned in the intro than your album. It feels like a little less tongue in cheek about that. Like I do think it sticks more to this like virtual imagination type.
By the way, I looked up edutainment on the Consumer Aesthetic Research Institute, and it came up with utopian scholastic as a tag for this style of art that the cover art is aping. And like this album is very much going towards that aesthetic. So it's I like the album too. There's a lot of variation in the tracks. It's not as consistent. Like track 3 is breakbeat. Like I was really curious about that. So I went on there's a website you can upload an MP3 to, and it'll tell you the beats per minute. And so this is 129 beats per minute. So
modest.
Yeah. Well, it's breakbeat and not drum and bass. That's the difference. Drum and bass is like over like more like 150 beats per minute or more. So breakbeat is like 130. So just to be pedantic about it.
Logic broing my genres.
No.
But yeah, so I thought though that right off the bat, the opening track felt way less like brand advertising.
One thing I liked about track 1, and it shows up a lot, are these like bit crushed beats in them.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I like a good bit crushed sound. Not too much, but like a little bit. It adds a little bit of spice.
Yeah, and then track 2 is sort of interesting. Office Zen Garden, where it starts off with all this some sort of alternative percussion, like a xylophone or something, or some synth batch, and kind of becomes more and more hustle bustle and busier. And then there's like crowd sounds and people murmuring.
Yeah, again, more that field recording.
Yeah, and then it fades out into just like Zen Garden and like I called it Sims piano, like Maxis SimCity type piano.
Yeah. Oh my god.
That's kind of what I associate that. That's stuff with.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like you said, track 3 is like, I didn't really think of it as breakbeat, but it is like a funky club song almost.
Yeah. Definitely EDM kind of music. I really like the little like synth vocal chorus that comes in towards the end. Yeah.
Track 4 we talked about, but I didn't know if you had any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, it was very inquisitive, kind of like I can get more of those beat crust bits. I like the hissy, steamy kind of stuff coming in later towards the end of the song.
Yeah, it gets harsher. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of progression per track in this album. I think because the tracks are slightly longer than on yours, so they explore more ideas.
Yeah.
Then moves into track 5, Dawn, which sounds like very ambient. Like it really opens up with like these big wide voicings.
It's very new age.
Yes. New age is a good word for it. Just all kinds of auxiliary instrumentation, which is something when I get through the quick track descriptions, I'll talk about on both of these.
It's also kind of like this track reminded me of like in the 80s and 90s, how like there's very much a fad or a trend of executives and, business people being really like, oh, Japan knows everything. And like trying to blend the office with the mysticism of the East, that level of like 80s and 90s racism, talking about like, ooh. And so like they would always have this music, like, the joke was the CEO with like some katanas and like calligraphy in his office. And so he was trying to be very meditative and reading about Zen and all this other bullshit. And whenever you need music, there would be like this kind of sound to it, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. That totally makes sense. Going back to the tower we talked about, it sounds like the music that would play when the CEO is going in his sauna.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think then we moved to track 6, which I want to say is probably my favorite track on the album. Dirty synth bass patches, a lot of variety. It's 7 minutes, so it has a lot of room to explore a bunch of different ideas. There's all kinds of little synth leads, horns, all kinds of transitions between different parts. So I'm actually going to play a quick sample from about 4.5 minutes in. you have these horns and then like the synth and then this just grimy pocket beat going on, I guess is how I describe it. It's I call it corporate jazz fusion. Like it's very into it. Very, very into this type of stuff.
For some reason, it reminded me of the soundtrack for the Nickelodeon show Legend of the Hidden Temple, but maybe because I watched too much of that.
You did have a period where you watched too much of it.
I did watch too much of it, but I don't know. It did. Yeah, corporate fusion jazz is a really good term for it too. Yeah,
very similar though. I can see what you're saying because the synth lead patch does sound very similar. Mm-hmm. I totally get that. I don't think you're being unreasonable at all in that comparison.
There's an interesting Venn diagram between corporate office music and like educational PBS Nickelodeon kind of music for kids.
Yeah, just all inoffensive and cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Inoffensive, cheap, instrumental, and positive. Like that's sort of like I think the key word is you have to be can't be a downer, it can't be too complex, can't make you think too much. So there's a big overlay between the two.
Yeah. I agree. And that brings us into track 7, which I thought has an associated video with it, which is a lot of like 3D imagery of the time.
Oh, yeah. Like 90s level 3D. So very, very good stuff.
Exactly.
Wild imagery, though. Like really gets really like, the artist is having fun with like pyramids and robot dinosaurs and shit like that. Like, pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, it is more like Encarta, early Civ 3 type pyramids and stuff.
Yeah.
And the music itself has like really a little bit of everything. Like they kind of really go nuts with all the auxiliary sounds. And that kind of brings me to one thing that I think is really essential for capturing that kind of 90s soundscape, or what leads that feel so much, is that it was an era of like intense synth experimentation. And it had really moved, I think, this is just conjecturing, started to move from, you have to kind of design everything yourself to prepackaged, right? You get, I think in like early 90s, 91, 92 is probably when I got some little 1.5 octave Casio keyboard that had a bunch of sounds and 4 little drum pads and stuff. I feel like there's just this, got incredibly easy and cheap to experiment with all these sounds, all these prepackaged sounds. What can you do with them? And I think capturing that sort of vibe by having just a very eclectic choice of voicings and sounds is like one of the most important parts to getting that 90s sonic soundscape that I think some other work misses.
Yeah.
And that no one really knew what sounded good or what people would like.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's the key word, or the key phrase there is that people hadn't figured it out yet. Like they didn't know what sounded good. Yeah. So it's all good. It doesn't matter. Like it's all cheap. They make this kind of music on a very extreme budget, both in time and money. So they just got to crank it out and throw it out there. And the business people who are using it don't know any better and don't care. Because as long as it sounds positive, it's fine. But like as time goes on, people want more sophisticated, more complex music or better sounding music. And that's why music today sounds, well, on YouTube, every big streamer has that streamer safe music. So like, yeah, that could be a future episode, is streamer safe music and the sounds of that. That's more cursed than haunted, though.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, this kind of culmination of all the previous tracks, though, on this album, I felt like it had a little bit of everything in that sense. At least, I don't know.
Well, I think that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, a very good album. It would be really fun to, like, in any kind of vaporwave mix, to just mix a couple tracks in from these two albums here and there. Is really good counterpoint to, like, late night lo-fi music or classic or hypnagogic, just to be peppy and like vacuous, but also like you're in on the joke. Yeah, I don't know. It's the music that reflects our reality. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. We had a lot of fun doing it. And I hope we're all at least 7.5% more productive as a result of listening to these two albums. I hope that's our milestone for this quarter. I hope we can reach that. So we should synergize some paradigms. Yeah, I need to update my business lingo too. That's an old phrase. But yeah, thanks for listening. Our next episode, we're going to continue on this business journey a little bit. We're going to go into utopian virtual, which is
that's right.
Sounds very similar in some ways to Officesoft, but in some way we'll find out how it's similar and how it's different. So we are very grateful for everyone who's listening. Please don't forget we have a Patreon. We just did an episode on late night lo-fi as a genre and talked about that. On the Patreon, we have, quite a few other episodes for us to listen to. We also have a Discord for our members to talk and share links. And it's very good. It's
a great community.
It is a great community. And if you want to reach us, we are at Night Clerk Radio on Twitter. I am at Ross Payton, and Burke is at Burke McBurkinson. We have a Facebook page that exists. And whenever I remember to post links to new episodes, I put it on there. But don't forget, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcasting apps of choice. Please rate and review us and tell your friends, tell your family, tell all your business associates and colleagues. You'll impress your boss by saying, here's some productive music to listen to. They'll definitely give you that raise. Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. You are.
We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.